Carl Sargent hanged himself in his utility room at home and left a note on the door telling his wife not to enter. An inquest heard today. The Welsh Assembly member killed himself 4 days after he was sacked by Carl Jones over sexual misconduct allegations. Today an inquest into his death was opened and adjourned at Ruthin in North Wales. Coroner John Giddens said his wife Bernie, 48, came downstairs and found her husband dead at their home in Coes Quay last Tuesday. Mrs. Sargent found a note in her husband's handwriting on the door of their lean-to, which urged her not to come in and call the emergency services. She ignored the request and entered and found him on the floor. Paramedics and police were called and the Labour politician could not be revived. Carl Sargent's wife Bernie, 48, pictured together, found her husband dead at their home in Coes Quay last Tuesday. An inquest heard today. Carl Jones has police after his house in South Wales, pictured last Tuesday, was sprayed with graffiti hours after he refused to resign over Carl Sargent's death. A provisional cause of death was given as hanging. Mr. Giddens said his inquest will not consider the truth of allegations made against Mr. Sargent or making adjudications on who is right or wrong. Mr. Sargent, 49, was found in a lean-to off the utility room of his ex-council house home in Coes Quay, Deeside after his wife had found a note on the door of the utility room. Mr. Giddens, senior coroner for North Wales, said he would hold a full and fair investigation into the death and would examine what steps the Welsh Assembly took to look after Mr. Sargent's mental welfare after the allegations had been made against him. The 10-minute hearing, which was not attended by Mr. Sargent's wife or their 2 adult children Jack and Lucy, was told that the family and paramedics had desperately tried to revive Mr. Sargent for between 20 and 30 minutes. He said, "In the sudden death report I was informed that on the morning of the 7th of November, Mrs. Bernadette Sargent had gone downstairs and had found a note on the door of the utility room in Mr. Sargent's handwriting advising her not to enter but to call the police. Othelus, she did go in and found her husband on the floor of the lean-to which was off the utility room after an apparent act of self-harm. An ambulance was called and she, together with family members, tried to resuscitate him until the arrival of paramedics who continued for another 20 to 30 minutes before pronouncing life extinct." The coroner said that a post-mortem was carried out by Drive Andrew Dalton at Glenclwyd Hospital on November the 10th who would conduct toxicology tests but gave a provisional cause of death as hanging. Mr. Giddens said he was required by law to open an inquest into Mr. Sargent's death and to reach a conclusion about when, where and how he had died. He said, "It is important to note that it is not the coroner's duty to establish why a death has occurred or why someone may have chosen to end their life. Indeed, I am specifically prohibited as a coroner from making determinations pertaining to civil or criminal liability.